WrestleZone from my apartment, where there is Wi-Fi now. What's up, everybody? It's Kevin Kell once again with the WrestleZone Daily Podcast. I think right now we're just going with WrestleZone Podcast, which is completely fine. Plenty going on in the podcast feed this week. We have those big exclusive interviews with Lisa Marie Varon, Victoria, you may know her from WWE, Aiden English, Chris Jericho, and Madman Fulton is the latest big guest coming down the pipeline. You can check those out also on our YouTube channel. We're on a bunch of different platforms where you guys can get the show. Wherever you're listening or watching the show, thank you so much. If you really enjoy it, hit that like button, okay? Give it a good review, all right? Especially if you're in the podcast apps. That really helps. It's really helpful. And share it. We love being interactive. Saying fans' names on the show is important. You see them, especially if you watch the show live, you see that too. So you can really help the show out by sharing everything here. Lot to cover on today's show. We'll talk about NXT versus AEW. The Wednesday Night Wars have fired up in a direction they have not been firing in quite some time. A big ratings upset as we get into what could be the biggest shows that they put on TV in quite some time. That's right, on television, not a pay-per-view event, not on the network. We'll talk about the Great American Bash going head-to-head with Fyre Fest. Also within today's show, we may or may not have big news about NXT UK, WWE's European division, which has gone under a very, very big scandal. They were several wrestlers from there were accused of varying degrees of sexual misconduct, some very awful things, and the speaking out movement. Several of those wrestlers released from the company, other ones defending themselves. And within this afternoon here, we're coming to you on Tuesday afternoon. We're told that as we're live, there's a possibility we may get news about a big announcement in NXT UK. Now, whether or not that is related to speaking out or simply that the promotion has been on pause for the last, 2 or 3 months due to the pandemic, we'll find out more. Now, what that announcement is, we don't know. It's widely speculated what it could be, but if we get it while we're on air today, we will share that with you. So there's a possibility of us getting that information within 15 to 20 minutes. But we got plenty to talk about. And I'm not the only one here. Okay. Now, normally I pitch the ball down to Florida. Things are crazy down there. Things are crazy. All right. Things were already crazy in Florida to begin with. Okay. People walk around gators like they're dogs. Okay. All right. Florida being Florida, all that stuff. But I gotta calm it down. I gotta feel the cooling waters of Three Rivers. Maybe not the most cleanest rivers, but rivers nonetheless. Pittsburgh, PA, Dominic D'Angelo, Double D, how are you? Bald and beautiful, back together once again. How are you?
Kev, good to be here, man. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good here. We got some wrestling to get into. I know you are fond of what we get from TNT, but we covered this. We were on air Thursday, and we got, which was a really shocking number, was a definitive victory by NXT in the ratings over AEW. AEW still had a strong performance with their core demos, but this was over 100,000 viewers. There's nearly a 30% difference in ratings, and one of the biggest increases for NXT this year. Their best number of the year. So just this real, I wouldn't call it a seismic shift, but certainly it's a clear victory. There was something there. And then going into these kind of like pay-per-views on TV model that they're trying to do, Wednesday night is the hardcore night. It is when I think they kind of experiment and are trying things. Fyte Fest has been promoted for weeks. Then out of nowhere, WWE throws this curveball and says, we're going to give you the Great American Bash. A lot of people are upset about that. You're not supposed to be able to do that. That's Dusty Rhodes' thing. Cody Rhodes is over on TNT. How dare you, WWE, use a show that you've owned the rights to for 20 years? How dare you? But what do you think here? The ratings were a shocking one, weren't they?
They were very shocking. Even just like the standard, you think about just WWE beating them or NXT beating AEW, and that would have been eyebrow raising just itself, but just the numbers too, and the stark difference between the two was a little jaw dropping. But yeah, WWE NXT for those past couple weeks beforehand hyped that match pretty darn well, and then you had the outside factors with AEW of Moxley not being able to be there and different things like that happening. I feel that it certainly had a factor into what those numbers ended up being, and just the consistent product that NXT had and delivered that particular night. So.
And you had that triple threat match. That triple threat match was something special. If you wanted what felt like a big, you can't turn away match, you you were going to get one there. That was going to be a big deal, and it delivered. And you're going to get something that feels big with Keith Lee, who's a guy who feels like he's breaking out. People feel like they're seeing a star become a star with him against Adam Cole, who's been at the top of NXT for such a long time. Sometimes when you have those things that have been there for a long time, but just haven't, you get the blossoming moment, and you get to see maybe what could be like a torch passing moment with Keith Lee and Adam Cole, and something special of a guy who has both belts. That's unique. That's a hardcore fan thing. Hardcore fans like you and I mentioned dudes, guys 20s and 30s, women 20s and 30s, teenagers, that core audience. That's what Wednesday nights are about. That's what you and I see in terms of who talks about it. It isn't just those shows. I wouldn't say they're not welcoming to casual fans. There's things they do on them that are meant for casual fans. The Gaga, the fun stuff with Orange Cassidy, I think goes in that direction. What they're doing with Dexter Lumis and Roderick Strong and WWE. But those shows are designed, marketed, digitally pushed towards this hardcore audience. And I found it surprising because everything about AEW is we're cool. We're cool. We're not WWE. We're cool. We're not them. We have some names, but do you think they've dipped too much into we're a wrestling show, but we're going to out sports entertainment WWE? Because I feel like sometimes they're doing that. We're getting a lot of in-ring segments kind of closing the show. They went with Jericho and Orange Cassidy. Now, mind you, it was a brawl and you got some real physicality and there was blood and it was cool, but the numbers showed that it was the lowest rated thing on the show, which was shocking to me that Jericho would get that, because Jericho's such a big name and they were building up to some confrontation. And Cassidy is a guy who got a huge reaction when I was at AEW Revolution, one of the best matches on the show. So it's kind of surprising. I want to know what the fans think here about what's going on here. I have some fans asking questions about WWE putting on live shows in 2020 with fans. We've heard some rumblings of that. We will cover it. There isn't much there, but what we do have, we will cover within the show. Once again, we're going live, and there's a potential of things breaking while we're on the show. So we're kind of like waiting for something to come in here at the same time. But NXT, AEW, what is NXT doing, you think, overall? You mentioned the compelling matches and things, but is there any storyline over there you're like, oh, I could see that being a channel changer? I really think, there's been a couple of things at AEW that I was like, I would turn over for that if I was watching both shows live at the same time.
Yeah, I think what we just talked about was the title match there and the intrigue of, hey, who's going to get to secure those two belts? And you have like a budding star like Karrion Kross for that brand, where there's a lot of intrigue and mystery and uniqueness to that persona, him and Scarlett together. I feel like it's a pretty good package deal that they've been kind of issuing out to a lot of the viewers there. As far as AEW goes, it's a little like just seeing. I think Orange Cassidy certainly has that strong upside to him, and so I am alarmed. Like, I did hear that too. That was the lowest rated segment for AEW was between him and Jericho.
Which it doesn't, like, when you say that on paper, it's like, well, Jericho's a huge star. How does that work? Do you think he would retain,
I think he'd retain, but like, that is a big main event that's happening. And it's not, that's not a match. Like, if they were going up against one-on-one, because that closed up the show, right? Orange Cassidy.
Yes.
Yeah. So if they were going up, that's a tall order to go up against if you're just having a face off.
I mean, we're not even talking about the pandemic changing routines of people.
Right. And
there's just a lot of that there's a big factor in how it's affected the wrestling business in a huge way. No fans, you and I know this, we've talked about it for a while. The no fans factor has really taken a lot of people out of it now. Then you have the COVID stuff from last week. There's a lot of things that hit WWE that just kind of get rolled over in terms of perception on AEW. I mentioned this on last night's show with Robert DeFilis. You guys can go listen to it. It's in the podcast feed now. There was a big lumberjack match in AEW. They ended with Jericho and Orange fighting in the crowd with the COVID stuff. I don't think that's a good look. WWE did this on SmackDown. They had a bunch of people around the ring, and it was just like, I do think that kind of makes some people uneasy. Do I think it makes you want to not watch? It does make you go like, ugh. Like last night on Raw, we saw people wearing the face mask. It was like, hey, as much as you're going to be angry about people in WWE getting COVID, and we've heard numbers as high as 19 to 20 people, right? We don't know how many, by the way, we don't. And also, if we don't know, we don't know. I think people are being very assumptive about that. I do think some of those things kind of irk some people, specifically casual viewers and stuff like that. So I do want to read some text here. John Kirby texting, I tried to watch AEW, but I just got bored. Turned in last week and was bored out of my mind. NXT was more entertaining. I was kind of surprised by that. Other people texting in here about this as well. Want to get Anne's text up on screen. She says, I'm going to take a guess that AEW's Fyter Fest will be better than NXT. What do you think here? Fyter Fest has been built up. It has been a show that's been, we knew this was going to be on TV for, I think, nearly a month now. And NXT kind of threw the curveball and said, last week, we're giving you the Great American Bash the next 2 weeks. They did say 2 weeks ago that they were going to have a big match with, they set things up where a North American triple threat match, the winner with the title gets to take on Adam Cole for the title. They did say that about 2 weeks ago, but they didn't tell you it was like, hey, we're going to do a 2-week pay-per-view head-to-head with AEW. Obviously, that's what they're doing. If you're an AEW fan and you're mad about it, look at it this way. It's competition. WWE acknowledges you now as competition, and they want to fight to beat you in the ratings. That's what you want. If you can't have it both ways, you can't say we're going to compete with them, but then when we lose a game, doesn't matter. But yeah. So what do you think? How do you think it goes here? Was this just a flash in the pan for WWE in terms of ratings victories this week?
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to call it a flash in the pan, but I do think that AEW is going to rebound this week. I just by looking at the lineup that each card has, I know they have for NXT, they have Timothy Thatcher taking on Oni Lorcan. They have the non-title match between Io Shirai and Sasha Banks.
Which Sasha Banks, do not deny her. As a ratings draw, she has been able to pull in a hardcore fan. You bring in those casual audiences. She has that young female, teenage, 20-something audience that loves her online. You and I have seen that on the website quite a bit.
Yeah.
And she can really galvanize and bring viewers onto a show. She is a very, very quiet ratings draw. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a way where it's understated, what she can bring to the table.
And then you got there's also the number one contender elimination match 4-way between the 4 women on that, like Dakota Kai, Tegan Knox. Who else is on there? There's 2 other women on there.
It's another thing with NXT is they're not just saying we're going to go with the big top guys to do this. We're going to try and trust our middle of the upper card people, especially with the women. They're doing that. If we're going to bring someone over for our SmackDown, it's going to be selective and it's going to make sense. All right, we saw Sasha and Bayley. This is something kind of playing off what they've done before. This isn't a match out of nowhere. Io got in the ring with them a few weeks ago. Io is a rising star. I wonder how they do this because Sasha is, getting ready to take on Asuka in a few weeks. Yeah. So I wonder how that's going to play out. It's something. I mean, NXT is putting something together, but they're not saying, hey, we're going to have Finn Balor up top. We're going to have Adam Cole up top right away. So I could see it going either way. I see it being close. I see Fyter Fest. I don't see it being a blowaway here. And I do feel like if it goes back and forth for a couple weeks, I could see that because there is an issue, I think, with AEW, just like WWE's had, where they're getting pinned now by a certain amount of people in the building. We can only bring out certain big stars. We mentioned the John Moxley situation. His wife, Renee Young, with WWE, has COVID-19. We don't know his status. We don't know whether or not he's going to be there. Now, mind you, they were always booked to be on the second night of Fyter Fest, July 8th, correct?
Yeah. At least I believe so. Just because it is a 2-week event, and that's the championship match, the championship match. So I could only imagine that's been the way it has been for those since they announced it. You just look at AEW's lineup though for tomorrow night, and the stakes that NXT had last week, AEW has this week, and there's 2 title matches going on. So you got I think 3. Yeah, it's because you have Cody defending his belt against Jake Hager.
That's a big match.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big match. It doesn't feel as big as it should be, though.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. You also have the women's title match, Hikaru Shida against Penelope Ford. Then you also have the tag team title match between Hangman, Omega, and the Best Friends. So 3 title matches going up against no title matches, right? There's no title matches.
And there's some fun things they're doing on NXT, but all of them don't have outside of Banks and Shirai. None of them jump off the page. They're doing the Fatal 4-Way. That'll be a fun match. They've done a lot of those though. You know what I mean? NXT's got a
Yeah.
lot of those, like, let's get all the women together in one big match. They're all really talented. They did this with the ladder match a while ago. It was a great ladder match, right? Let's get all, like, you know, when they did the takeover matches on TV. I think the second week of NXT seems to be like, okay, I got to see that because I know they're going to do Adam Cole versus Keith Lee. I know we're going to get some fulfillment of some other things there too. They're doing Dexter Lumis versus Roderick Strong in a strap match the first time. But the thing is, WWE, we didn't know we were going to get Timothy Thatcher versus Matt Riddle in a pit fight. And that turned out to be a really, really, really fun match that I heard many AEW loyals say, well, that match was cool. That was
Yeah.
but you know, there isn't anything that's super big. I do agree that title matches are better, and I do think there is this point of, well, what do you got? If you're the fan that's now in between, I think there is that central fan now that's like, I'm the hardcore wrestling fan. I know Wednesday night's the hardcore night. What show has what I want to watch? And I do think some fans are stepping in now, going online, seeing what's going to be there. Like you're watching our show, seeing what's there. If you're asking me now, mind you, my assignment on Wednesday for work is to watch NXT live.
Yeah.
But you bring up that Fyter Fest card, I'm like, that's a pretty stacked card, you know, and like there's some bangers there. If you just want banger matches, and if you think Raw has too many talking segments and all this stuff, like that's what Wednesday nights are supposed to be. And I can see the AEW having that the pure product there, and NXT leading in a little bit more into the Gaga, the bigger names and different things like that.
Yeah, and you know, I think a key part to how these ratings are going to work out is what are you starting the show off with? What is each show going to start off with? And I could only imagine. I would put money down that AEW is starting off with one of the title matches as an opening bout, and then what's NXT starting off with? Like, what is going to really catch that fan initially to stay tuned onto that and locked onto that, rather than tune into whatever title match they're putting on first on Dynamite. So, yeah, week one, I'm saying it's going to go to AEW, and who knows what's going to happen with week two because of the Moxley situation. And, you know, you have Jericho and Orange Cassidy next week. Oh, to add on to that, too, this week, Jericho's on commentary on AEW. You know how intriguing he is.
They've had a good run with him on commentary. It's a way to get him on the show. And you're feeling him throughout the entire show. You know he's going to be involved in an angle. If at least he's going to be on commentary, he's going to be involved in some type of angle or a promo or something like that.
Yeah.
So it does add something there. And I'm not saying like, oh, Jericho's lost his luster at all that the segment happened. It was just a very surprising thing. But when you lean it up against what NXT had, it's like, I get it. Like NXT had a really compelling match to go off the air on. And if you were a fan of both, you'd be like, all right, I would want to see both and I'll catch one later. And the thing, the modem has been, I've had a lot of people say, oh, I check out NXT over the weekend in bits and pieces because then I'll start watching it on Thursday, but I watch AEW live. This is the first time where I ever felt like there was a channel changing factor, at least for the last few months. And now we're doing it with kind of pay-per-view elements where it's like, this isn't just another show. This is a show you have to watch, you know, a summer sweeps, if you will. So it'll be interesting. I do think both shows are entertaining. I lean more on AEW on the first night. But that Adam Cole Keith Lee match feels like this big collision. It feels bigger. It feels very, very big. Cody versus Jake Hager. I want it to be big, but as I mentioned, doesn't feel super electric, and it does feel like some gaga, some dustiness will be sprinkled on that. So Jake Hager still looks like a monster, and Cody still gets to keep the TNT title until they change it and make it gold, right? Because it's still silver.
Yeah, they're still working on that.
I know that's such a big thing for people.
I know people are still upset about it. I'm like,
I'm not one of those belt fans, though.
No,
I'm not one of those fans who's like, oh, how do you have that belt? Like they lose their mind in the way a title looks. It's such a very specific thing that people get angry about.
Old people are, it's a niche here in pro wrestling fandom.
Scott George texted in, big fan of the show. Thank you so much for supporting Scott. See you all the time. He says Sasha and Io might be enough to compete with AEW. Here's another thing. I think because of the pandemic and everything changing, also because of creative decisions that NXT has done, I also think maybe AEW kind of got into this lane of such long-term thinking. They don't want to change anything and they trust their theories and stuff like that. That some of their mid-card stuff takes up too much time and they don't give enough to their main events. And I think maybe that's why pacing and different things like that can pay off. And those are some of the new factors that you get when you learn you're doing a TV show. But who am I to talk about? Because AEW's been ahead most of the time that they've been doing this here. It's worth noting that both shows are not cracking 800,000 viewers.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, AEW, when they debuted it in November last year,
October.
changed the whole business. It was 1.4 million people. It's less than half that now. NXT was around 1.2, 1.3. Now they're down. So I mean, you guys got to be real about this. Like, you look at the big picture, like, there has been a trend towards this happening. It just kind of accelerated a little bit faster than what we were observing. And last week it felt like, okay, NXT's back in this game. I like they won around here. It's certainly interesting here. I do want to touch on this. We've been covering it for a little while. COVID-19 hit WWE last week. We have 4 confirmed names. We've mentioned that we believe there may be more. And the latest we know is that they've done extensive testing. We do know that Raw and SmackDown have been taped. All right. So we got the first full edition of Raw last night since they had this outbreak last week. We did get kind of half of an episode of SmackDown. It was a tribute episode to The Undertaker. Did a good rating. All right. The ratings were up for about 6% on that episode. And they kind of teased that The Undertaker was going to show up at the end of it, but he didn't. He didn't show up to beat up Baron Corbin. Some people call that a bait and switch. I was like, they didn't say he was going to be there.
Yeah,
they just so you can't say that for sure.
By your own volition, if you're going to.
Yeah, he brought up The Undertaker's name, but yeah. So WWE has been dealing with that. We understand that Renee Young will have some big announcements. She did get COVID-19, unfortunately. Caleb Braxton, Adam Pearce, and Jamie Noble also in the fold, also announcing it.
Caleb Braxton also deleted her Twitter account, too.
Can you blame her, though? You get so much pressure and people ask you about a bunch of different things. I don't blame that at all.
Yeah.
Renee Young going to have some big announcement tomorrow. She called it a big, fat announcement. She clarified she's not pregnant. A lot of people want this. That's a rush thing there. I'd be very scared to be pregnant right now if you had COVID-19, obviously.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So that kind of clarified things. Everyone said, she's going to AEW. I was like, we can tell you that is not happening. All right. I'd be very, very surprised if that was happening. And if she was leaving WWE, there wouldn't be this like next day I'm with the competing company. There's a lot of contract things.
She's not going to Rick Rude it.
Yeah, there's no Rick Rudin anymore. We're not doing it, especially with people with different contracts and stuff like that. So that's not happening. What do you think this announcement will be? WWE Backstage was canceled last week, and you got that bad news. I think there's some program, some new venture that you see.
Yeah, maybe we'll see another rendition, a different type of Backstage. Booker T was talking about it, maybe going digital or something to that effect.
Sure.
So it could be something to that effect. But hey, Renee is such a big top, I will say, personality for WWE. I would call her almost the voice of WWE at this moment in time. And she's such a valuable commodity that you have to do something big with her if you're gonna use her the right way. So I could imagine.
I agree. But also she's fighting COVID-19. There's no clear end to that. People think, 14 days. Yeah. If you're healthy, you beat it. The last we heard is she's doing well, but she's in quarantine. The last we heard as well is that Jon Moxley's being consistently tested. All right.
Yeah.
He has this title match with Brian Cage in AEW. So that's another thing is like one person's in WWE, other person's the head figurehead of AEW. And the theories have happened that this was done on purpose from knee-jerk reactions. No.
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. There's no germ warfare in wrestling.
Yeah.
ITX veteran BC texts in and says, is Jon Moxley going to fight? It's up in the air. It's very, very up in the air as to what he's going to do. I think we'll have a better inclination of what's going to happen on Wednesday. I mean, I don't think AEW is going to come out of this week's show, the part 1 of Fyter Fest, going into part 2, saying that you're going to have a Jon Moxley match and not having it on July 8th. But it's a very fluid situation.
Yeah, and why, if you're AEW, why would you make some sort of announcement that Moxley's not going to be here at this moment in time? Just leave it to the element of speculation and thought to the fans to kind of be like, well, is he going to be there or isn't he? They don't have to announce yet. If I had to guess, I'm going to say no, he won't be. But I'm sure they're trying to work out an idea of what they can do to replace that, to keep that still, that momentum, hopefully, that they're going to get from week 1 going into week 2. But yeah, I could not imagine Moxley competing under these circumstances whatsoever. It just seems weird, doesn't it, Kev, to think about that?
It does, and even if he is clear, there's still like an exposure that's unreasonable. And your wife is dealing with that. Now you're going to get on a plane and leave.
Right.
So, and then there's the conversation because he dropped the title, all that stuff. He said some bad luck with bad timing of
How
injury
about it?
in
Jeez.
AEW. He had the elbow surgery, then he had the infection after it, and that was drawn out. And that was an issue he's had for the last 2 years. He's been dealing with different issues with his arm.
Staph infection, right?
Yeah. I think he had staph like once or twice when he was kind of coming off the surgery on the arm, and that was in WWE.
Yeah.
And now coming over here, and then he had another issue with it in Japan, and then it's been a lot, So, and he's supposed to be a big star for you, and I don't know, has AEW got as much out of him as you think they should have? Because I think they have. He's been a big part of their year. I mean, and he was a huge part of that first Double or Nothing show. Him showing up was a huge thing.
Yeah, I think he has.
Has that cooled off? Has him as champion cooled off for you already?
Not for me personally. I like him as champion. But I think he's kind of cooled off in regards to being the champion. It's just because we haven't seen a whole lot of action. The build to his opponents coming up here, I don't think have been as hot and packed as much of a punch as you've wanted it to. I think they need to come up with something to kind of make that intriguing. I'm intrigued to see Cage versus him once it happens. But I do think that they need to try to make those stakes pretty high and, giving Moxley more opportunity to speak perhaps, and just kind of having him be more of a factor during, I know it's the circumstances have certainly played weight to it, but having him be a factor actually at the venue, I think will play to their benefit a lot more. They've been doing a lot of cool vignettes with him, but it's one thing to have those cool vignettes, but it's also, I think, important to have him there physically. So there's a lot that they can do, and I think it's partially circumstantial, partially, I think fans just haven't really had too much of an opportunity to see Moxley in his full swing of a persona. And he's early in doing this too. You got to kind of think he's been in the WWE system for how many years? So him getting back into the swing of him being himself and having that freedom to kind of do what he wants and say what he wants, it can be a little touch and go kind of thing. And there's a lot of expectations on his shoulders to deliver. So, I mean, it's all about trial and error a lot in wrestling. And sometimes you throw stuff out of wall and see if it sticks, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it has. For Mox, I've liked him as champion. I think he fits the bill very well. But yeah, I think they can just certainly do more with him.
He's had good matches as a champion. They've been strong matches. The match with Brody Lee was, I think, better than the build to the match itself.
Yeah.
Which is never bad.
That was awesome. I really liked that match.
Yeah. Very underrated match. Very underrated match.
That was the match of the night for Double or Nothing, I would say.
Stadium Stampede was the big talking point.
I remember those saying for me, that was my match of the night was that one. So,
but I do agree with you. I don't think that the opponents for him, it's never felt like this is a big time matchup since he won the title. I mean, beat Jericho for the title. I was at that show. It was awesome. You had an arena full of people loving the idea that Moxley was the new champion. And it felt like a big time thing. But I think most of it's just circumstantial. What feels big? I've had a lot of people say Drew McIntyre had his big moment beating Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, but there was no fans there. There is always this kind of everything's kind of graded on this different curve. I know curve is a big thing we hear now, flattening the curve, all this stuff. But everything I think is graded on a different curve now. So I'm okay with it. So, but I mean, I was kind of stepping away. I want to get into that conversation. Want to get into this. We've gotten mixed reports about this. Ryan Hyde is texting. Is there any update on when fans will return to wrestling? Also, WWE giving an update on their COVID-19 situation. So that kind of ties together, and we bring it up so often here. Florida, for the past, I want to say, month or so, the state of Florida specifically, has been mobilizing many of the big sports organizations in the United States, several of them, to perform or do isolated tournaments there. Florida did have big cases early on, but had the loosest restrictions in terms of the biggest state. They did restrict people from the Northeast coming into the state, which people thought was a big reason why they were able to continue and do this. Now, obviously, if you've been following the news in the past 48 hours, let alone the last week, they're now a hotspot. And they have record numbers every single day. And we've looked at 40,000 new cases in the past 2 days each. And there's been a fear that we could get 100,000 new confirmed cases every day, maybe in the next week or so. So people fear another wave here, more shutdowns, reverting even further as we were trying to step our way back into some level of normalcy while dealing with the virus. And Florida looked at themselves as this hub for sports. Major League Soccer will be there. NBA will be on the ESPN Wide World Sports Campus. There was a lot of hope there. And WWE and AEW have been in Jacksonville and Orlando for months now, right? Because they're the circus show, right? that isn't sports. Yeah. Then we get word from an arena in Lakeland, Florida, not an arena that WWE normally run, that they would start doing TV tapings there potentially at some point in July. And that lines up with what the governor of Florida, Richard DeSantis, had said in late April, early May, saying he would like to see live sports in the state by July. And as much as people thought that was crazy, up until a couple of weeks ago, they were on track to get there. That was, I thought if things kept going in this direction, a positive one, that we would have seen that. Now we get word that WWE is delaying those plans for live shows with fans. They've had outbreaks themselves in the Performance Center. We saw, a trainee a week ago have it. Then there were other cases. Now we've heard numerous. How many people? Then there's been a suppression of information. Other people claiming HIPAA, that there's privacy laws about whether or not you can say it, which is 100% true, by the way. If people don't put that information out there, it doesn't get out. All right, the individual people can put that out. If they sign off on putting it out, they can put it out. Right. So we understand now that they're delaying those plans, and I would say those are probably a smart route of action. But how much do you miss wrestling with fans, Dominic? How much do you miss it?
I mean, it kind of goes like you were saying, Kevin. It kind of goes back into the topic we were just talking about with Moxley. Like you saw when he won that title and how amped up the crowd was at Revolution, and then the next night too on the next week on Dynamite, next Wednesday. It added a whole element of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? This is big. This is big. You take that crowd away, everything kind of just levels out to an extent. You want the stakes to be high, but they're not nearly going to be high without the crowd there. It's a huge factor, Kevin. You think too, I think I just saw too on Twitter here that NBA, the Denver Nuggets, I think 18 players or something tested positive, or one of the NBA teams, 18 players tested positive.
Yeah, and there's numerous big name players or select players for different teams in the NBA are saying that they are opting out of playing this kind of short season. I'm
sorry, Kevin. I think it's 18 out of 300 total NBA players
total in the league, which is you have other people pulling out of it here too.
Yeah. So
it is a scary situation. But another thing is people say, oh, WWE, Robert and I talked about this, and Robert is a proponent for just pausing wrestling in general right now.
I am too.
You are too. I'm okay with both to a degree in this regard. People say, oh, they've had these cases, you should stop. And especially in Florida, there's a surge. But how did they keep doing this for months and months and months and they didn't have these cases? How has AEW been doing this for months and months and months and didn't have cases that we know of, right? And my thing is like, I feel this maybe WWE's figured something out, AEW's figured something out with what they have to be able to do this. And I'm okay with both as long as you try and stay safe. Now, if it just gets ridiculous and there's way too many people that have it, stop. Okay. And I'm okay with it stopping. They certainly have more than enough content. AEW, I think, would be in a tougher position there. But they have content to run and take weeks off if you want to do it. And it wouldn't hurt I don't think it would hurt wrestling too much if you took 2 weeks off.
No, at least, yeah. If you take 2 weeks off, AEW could even put a couple of good packages of video compilation of the best of or certain spotlights you can
use the at-home presentation that you've seen all the late night TV shows do.
Yeah, it's You know,
Jericho's Wednesday night special, and he just like hosts his best matches.
Oh my God, people would tune into that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and I mean, Jericho do like a talk show or something like that.
Yeah, or like WWE has a wealth of different stuff they could use.
Yeah,
and integrate people or do something live with a big name. You can throw a bunch of different ideas at the wall. We are waiting for that big potential announcement about NXT UK.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten anything just yet, but we do have some stuff from our friends over in the UK at TalkSport. Now, Alex McCarthy there has broken directly from WWE many big things about their international expansion, where the UK and Europe has been the main part of that. He reported yesterday, WWE are not looking to shut down NXT UK and are committed to a global expansion. So there was fear that NXT UK would shut down. How bad would that be?
That would be bad. I mean, particularly for the UK market. I think their brand, I mean, it is tainted, but if you're able to like kind of keep a jump on it as soon as possible and be like, okay, we got rid of the rot, and now here
say whatever you want. WWE's been they've been straight up about here's how we're handling every individual case.
I kind of some of it though, like there's those ones. I mean, with like Velveteen, you haven't heard anything about him, and that's an alarming one.
Sure, but part of it is like what you hear, then we're just left to assume. I do think we have to kind of curb people's thing with that, especially when you're hearing all these people accused of things. Oh, well, I haven't heard this person not get accused, and then they're accused. Well, we got to wait to see. There's some due process to this.
There is.
Travis Banks and El Ligero were released. There was enough information for WWE to say, like, all right, we don't want to be associated with these people anymore. Trent Seven was accused. He came out right away and said, I'll clear my name. Velveteen Dream in NXT in Florida. He was accused. Then it felt like hoaxy, and then it went away. Then some legal things came up. Then he had a car accident last week, and he got out of the car. Now it feels like
there's more text images too,
and more text images came out. So I mean, like you saw, gentleman Jack Gallagher get released. Matt Riddle, he got accused. He said, I had this relationship outside of my marriage. My wife has known about this. She's staying with me. WWE knew about this person, and now it becomes a he said, she said situation. And he brought up cyber stalking. So you have some guys who are defending their names and trying to clear the names. They haven't yet. But NXT with WWE, I know people say I've been called a WWE apologist, but I think they've been very upfront with us at the media saying we understand what people are going to do in their individual lives, and we have a strict, this is our policy. And they laid out their policy. They said what there is, and we're going to enforce it. And we've already seen people get fired, and we've seen some people not get let go. So I think it's a case by case basis, but the NXT UK division seemed to have a real concentration of it.
Yeah.
And also they lost a couple. There's like 3 or 4 guys that are on the fence now. Tyler Bate as well.
Yeah, he's another one. And you, but like if you're on top of it, and this is like, say if their announcement today was going to be like, okay, we're bringing the brand back, it's coming back, we're going to do shows again. That would be the way to handle it if you're planning to move forward with it. But I mean, otherwise, if you kind of like languish in like this limbo of unknown with the UK brand, I would almost scrap it. I mean, because it's just like they've put so much into it.
Sure, they have. And also, I don't know if scrapping it is the exact thing, but it was something before they launched it.
Do something different.
Sure. And there was something where we got that tournament a few years ago, 2017, 2018. And then you didn't hear anything from it. And they were waiting to see if they were going to get a TV deal for it. And then it's like, all right, well, we're just going to put it on the network. And they do have some TV presentation. And so then there was a separate deal. So things it took a long time. And they had Pete Dunne would come over from Europe, and they were still letting those guys do select shows. And then once they started doing their show, kind of riled up the horses, and here we are. It is the UK scene is a little bit smaller and tighter, but obviously they've had a real concentration of this problem. Mind you, it's across the wrestling business. This has touched every major promotion in the world, and New Japan as well. I know some people say, "Oh, no one in New Japan." Will Ospreay got it, but he wasn't. He was accused of basically saying, "Oh, don't say that about my friend, and don't book this person who said this thing about my friend." Basically, so that's there. I'm of the thought I think NXT UK will figure out a way to get through this, and it may not be every week. It may be less shows, which I'm okay with. I would be okay with less WWE right now, but they are the masters of their own creation at this point. Where the thing they've created is now this beast they have to constantly feed in terms of TV contracts. So
well, you look at it too, and like it's how much of your investment and time and expenses do you want to put into that to kind of rebuild that brand back up? Is it worth your time and the money that you're going to put into it to get some sort of positive reception out of it again? And because like the brand, the UK brand,
also Europe is in a different spot than we are. There is a welcoming idea of starting to do some events. If you told me, and mind you, I'm not saying I'm following the situation with COVID as closely as I am in the United States and Europe, but if you told a common American wrestling fan that they're going to have wrestling shows in Europe before the United States, it wouldn't surprise them. It wouldn't surprise them with the way those countries are regulating it and the way they're dealing with it in mass. If New Zealand had 43,000 people at a rugby match a week and a half ago, that's shocking to say.
That's crazy.
Now.
That's crazy.
So there's some countries that are ahead of it on us. And if WWE says we can start doing shows here and we can do it with this talent in this place, if it's not even UK, maybe it's another part of the region, maybe it's a different part of it, then there is something there. Do I see that happening right away? No, but Europe's been dealing with this case a long, long time. I do think they've flattened their curve a little bit better than we have. But you still have a lot of issues there too. So. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe NXT UK, if we want to go all the way out there, you want to see the craziest thing I could say is NXT UK gets to have live fans before any of the main roster WWE shows do.
That would be something.
That would be the craziest thing I think we could get out of this announcement.
And like yet, haven't got it yet. I think too, Kev, you mentioned his name. If you put Pete Dunne, if you put Walter back in those top spots. That's
another thing is they still have. I mean, even with all these guys that could potentially be let go or under investigation. It does thin out their roster quite a bit. I do see you can't bring American talent over to Europe, but I do see there's a depth they have there that we haven't seen just yet. I think they could pull up some guys from the ranks that they have, and women as well. And so, I mean, you have seen several names that we haven't even found what's going to happen with them punitively in NXT UK. So they are in a tough spot. They are in a very, very tough spot. In terms of the speaking out, I think they're the promotion that's been hit the hardest by this, along with Progress. Chikara is done because of it. So it's had some real ramifications here. Scott George bringing this up here. I had this up here on screen. Joe Coffey, Wolfgang, Trent Seven, Jordan Devlin are still under suspicion as well. That is true. Their names are also under suspicion on this as well. So I want to know what that rank is, though. They do have some depth there of some people we haven't seen. So I'm not writing it off yet. I think too much has been invested in it yet. They have a performance center out there. TalkSport is a reliable source. TalkSport's telling me this thing is still going. It's still going. Now, what's it going to look like? That's interesting. That's a question mark. But yeah, there's a lot of assumptions and speculations are all we kind of have to go on right now. So we will return tomorrow night after Fyter Fest Night 1, after the Great American Bash. Robert Felix will be with me trying to kill the fun, and I will fight for the fun. I will always fight for the fun. And you should join us. That show will be live on the podcast feed as soon as we can get it, live on Facebook as well. If you're enjoying the show and you're watching it on demand, thank you so much. Go ahead and give it a like. Smash that like button. Share it. Tag your friends in the comments if you're following a stream or something like that. So much fun. We have some big interviews coming up. Madman Fulton. That's an old name.
That's a great name.
The Madman, the Crusher. I
love those kind of names, like Mad Dog Deshaun, all that stuff.
It's cool stuff. Yeah. So he is speaking with us now on the podcast feed. It's also available on YouTube. So go give it a look. Dominic, if they want to give you a follow on the Twitter, where do they go?
Yeah, look at me on Twitter at Dominic D'Angelo. It's just my name. That's DOMINICDEANGELO. Got that way back when. So there you go.
Way back when you had to get those Twitter names real early.
Back in them bird days where you had the X for the pictures.
Yeah, back in the day of 2012.
2012 now.
I have my flip phone.
Way back when everybody was using one of them mouses.
Mouses. My MySpace was the only space I needed. I needed 8 friends. That's all I needed.
That's all I needed back then.
Simple times in the social media.
Now all complicated now. Streaming services and what have you.
We're getting ridiculous. We're 45 minutes.
We are, right? Yeah, I'm already stir crazy.
All right. Yeah. If you want more wrestling, go check out our most recent episode. We covered a lot of different stuff. Most recent we covered Raw. We covered the Tessa Blanchard issue. We covered obviously different issues of COVID-19, different things like that. So if you like the depth we're going to, check out the archive. Go listen to the interviews and different stuff like that. Go and subscribe. We're on Spotify, all that good stuff. Give me a follow at Kev Kellam, KEVKELLAM. You can hear me on the air on the best alternative rock radio station in the nation, 101 WKQX. We're doing some really, really cool stuff with Celebrate Goodness Everywhere. Obviously, there's a lot of bad news. We're trying to put positive voices on air. So good people you know in your daily life. We're trying to put segments of them talking about, hey, somebody made me a face mask, or somebody brought me a pizza, or this person's doing a great charity mission. It's pretty cool. I know obviously it's a Chicago thing. You can listen to it anywhere on your phone, anywhere. If you have iHeart, anything like that, maybe there isn't a cool alternative rock radio station in your town. You can listen to us and stream us 101WKQX.com.
Hey, I tuned into you guys in Pittsburgh when I was working.
There you go. Yeah. What do you think? Did we pass the test?
You passed the test. Yeah, you had some good teams playing on that.
Yeah. So it's a good mixture of alternative pop music, Nirvana, Green Day, a lot of fun stuff, and we're goofy on air. This isn't like, hey, this next song,
then the big dog in the morning.
Hey, coming at you. Well, I am a corn husk of a human being. I am a shallow person on the other side of this phone. Coming up next 15 minutes. I haven't talked to my wife in 5 years. Here's Green Day. It's not. It's not disingenuous like that.
Oh, that's a shame.
All right, so go give it a listen. We'll be back. Thank you guys so much for supporting everything we do. WrestleZone is an independent collective of nerds, geeks who love wrestling and have a professional media background, and you've been professional in your support, so we appreciate it. When watching wrestling, you must what, Dominic?
Enjoy it.